They said that loving was a sin, but hating was almost a sacred prayer. I was only 8 years old when I learned to cast curses on strangers I had never met. It was in that fire that my heart was formed, hardened by the flames of those teachings. My name is Amira, and this is my story, the tale of how I managed to escape a world that taught me to destroy, only to discover a love that could save me, even at an unimaginable price. Inside me, I carry a story that burns like a burning coal in my chest. It all began in Tai, a city carved in the middle of the desert, where the sun burned mercilessly and faith ruled with an implacable hand. I was a little girl with big eyes and a heart that seemed too delicate to bear so much hatred. Our home was like a stone fortress, with thick walls filled with secrets and silent prayers. My father, Ibrahim, was the king of that castle, a man whose voice had the power to silence any room. His long beard and intense gaze reminded me of a warrior devoted to Allah. My brothers, Khaled and Amir, were like his faithful soldiers, and their laughter had the same fire that shone in their eyes. My mother, Zob, was like a shadow in our world. Delicate hands, quiet voice, eyes heavy with a sadness I could not understand. Life in Tai followed a rhythm marked by rigid rules and constant ritual. The call to prayer echoed at dawn, snaking across the rooftops like an invisible thread connecting us directly to God. We prayed 5 times a day, our foreheads touching the ground, our hearts trained to fear Allah's wrath. The mosque was the beating heart of the city, its minaret pointing skyward like a finger indicating our fate. The sermons were like sharp blades, cutting through any doubt that might arise. From the time I could speak, I was taught that Christians and Jews were our enemies, cursed by Allah, their hearts poisoned by betrayal. They want to steal our faith, my father would say, his voice low and fierce. They are the wolves at our door. Every night, after the dishes were put away, my father would call us into his room, where the dim light of the lanterns cast dancing shadows. He would open his ancient Kutbas books in the shadow of the Quran, their pages scarred by time and use. There he would read passages that condemned the people of the book, and his words would sound like thunder over our heads. Christians and Jews conspire against us, he would say, his eyes locking with mine. They smile, but their hearts are made of poison. Never trust them, Amira. Never forget. I would nod, holding my small hands tightly together, just so I wouldn't disappoint him. I loved my father deeply, his approval a guiding light in a dark world. But his words weighed like stones on my chest, and I couldn't understand why I should hate someone I had never seen. My brothers, Khaled and Amir, soaked it all up like water in the desert. At 16, Khaled was tall, fierce, his voice already thick with a man's rage. Amir at 14 followed him like a shadow, always wanting to prove his strength. Under the starry sky of our courtyard, they would loudly recite the words of the khutbah, or tell stories of ancient battles where Muslims crushed infidels. One day we will fight them, Khaled would say, his fist clenched, and drive Christians and Jews from our land. Amir would agree, his eyes shining with dreams of glory. I listened to all this from my seat on the steps, hugging my rag doll, which my mother had lovingly sewn, its eyes 2 mismatched buttons. These stories stirred me, stirring fear and excitement at the same time. I wanted to be brave like my brothers, but my heart trembled in the face of so much hatred. At school, the reality was the same as at home. Our teacher, Salama, wore a black niqab that hid her face, leaving only her bright, stern eyes visible. She made us memorize verses that cursed Jews and Christians, her voice sharp and almost like a whip. "Louder, Amira," she commanded when my voice faltered. "May Allah hear your strength." The books we studied painted the West as a land of sin, where churches and synagogues were places of corruption. At recess, my friends and I played, but our games were not innocent. We ran around, shouting death to the infidels, our loud, wild laughter filling the air. Still, sometimes I wondered what these infidels looked like. Would they be monsters, or would they have faces like ours? At night, when all was silent, I would lie on my mat, while the moonlight filtered through the cracks in the wall. And it was then that my questions would arise, soft and dangerous, like whispers within my restless heart. Why did Allah command us to hate them? What exactly had they done to deserve such bitterness? I tried to push these doubts away, afraid they were forbidden sins. Once I found the courage to ask my mother, as she carefully combed my hair, her soft fingers stroking my scalp. "Mama, have you ever seen a Christian?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She stopped, looked toward the door as if waiting for something, and a quiet fear flashed in her eyes. "Ayira," she replied softly, almost a warning. "These questions are fire. They burn inside." Then she hugged me tightly, her heart pounding against my cheek. After that, I never asked the same question again, but the doubts remained there, buried like seeds waiting for the rain to germinate. Then came the night that turned everything upside down. It was a sweltering summer, the air heavy with heat and dust. The entire city had gathered in the mosque for a special sermon, the kind that makes the air seem to pulse with an almost palpable energy. I sat with the other women, my scarf slipping from my head as I shifted, the heat making my dress stick to my sweaty skin. The imam stepped up to the podium, his thunderous voice falling over the crowd like a storm. "The Christians and Jews are our enemies," he roared. "They poison our land. They conspire with the West to destroy our faith. We must confront them with our hearts, with our hands, with our blood." The crowd erupted in cheers, the men shouting, the women howling in response. My father's voice was the loudest, his fist raised in the air. Khalid and Amir stood beside him, their faces alight with fierce pride. I clapped, my hands small and unsteady, but a strange knot tightened in my stomach. As we left the mosque, the crowd's anger felt like a river about to overflow. We passed a house on the outskirts, one I knew by heart, small, silent, with a wooden door and a single olive tree in the yard. Whispers swirled about its inhabitants. They said they were secret Christians, hiding their cross behind locked doors. Suddenly the crowd stopped. Their voices rose like a storm about to explode. A rock flew through the air and shattered a window. Then another and another. The men shouted, words filled with hate that cut through the night like knives. My father joined the chorus, his face twisted in a fury I had never seen before. This was no longer the man who had tucked me in before bed. Khalid threw a rock, laughing as it hit the door, while Amir cheered, his voice cracking with the thrill of violence. I clutched my mother's hand tightly, my heart pounding, clutching my rag doll to my chest for refuge. Then I saw her, a girl my age, peering out from behind a curtain, her pale face lit by the moonlight, her eyes wide with terror. She was holding a small toy, a faint shape in the shadows that reminded me of my own doll. Our eyes met, and in that instant, time stood still. She wasn't a monster. She was just a child, scared, as small as I was. A hot, sharp heat washed over me, a crushing shame as if I had thrown those rocks myself. Why were we hurting someone like this? What had she done to deserve this? My mother pulled me away, her grip on my wrist almost painful. "Don't look in the mirror," she whispered, her voice shaking, but I couldn't look away. That little girl's face had followed me home, her eyes mirroring my own fear. That night, as I lay on the mat, a heavy silence filled the air. Her face haunted me, and the terror I saw in her eyes seemed to haunt me, impossible to shake. I prayed in desperate whispers, asking Allah to forgive me, even though I didn't know what sin I had committed. I thought of my father's anger, my brother's laughter, the imam's words, everything I knew, everything I believed to be true, but for the first time, I felt they were wrong. I held my rag doll, its button eyes staring back at me, and cried alone, the worn fabric wet with my tears. I was too young to understand the crack in my heart, but it was there, a small fissure that let in a light I didn't yet know how to name. That light would grow, years later, in a faraway land where I would meet people who would change my life forever. But at that moment, I was just Amira, daughter of Ibrahim, daughter of Al-Safir, trapped in a world I was taught to hate. My heart ached, filled with questions I was afraid to ask. 10 years after that night in Thai, I stepped off a plane and stepped into a world that felt like a dream I wasn't ready for. I was 18, and even with the weight of childhood lessons still on my chest, I clutched a scholarship letter tightly, a ticket to London, a city my father called a den of corruption and perdition. He tried to stop me from leaving, his voice harsh and hard, his eyes searching mine for any weakness. "The West will poison you," he warned, with the conviction of someone who believes he holds the world in his hand. But my mother, Zob, interceded with a mix of sweetness and fear, her trembling hands packing my suitcase with care. "This is her chance, Ibrahim," she whispered. Against all odds, he eventually relented, but his conditions were clear and hard. "Keep your faith. Avoid the infidel." I returned to Thailand after graduation, vowing to serve our people and make my father proud. I said yes with a lump in my throat, but inside, fear was choking me. Not just the fear of the unknown, but the fear of disappointing the ones I loved, of losing the only world I had ever known. Arriving in London was like being thrown into icy water. The city was pulsating, full of life and sounds, cars honking, lights flashing in all colors, people of all backgrounds and beliefs mingling together. I had never seen so many faces, so many different voices intertwined. Women walked around with their hair down, laughing loudly and freely. Men and women sat together in cafes, unafraid. I clutched my hijab tightly, trying to protect myself, feeling vulnerable, a bird lost in a storm. My father's words echoed in my head. They're all enemies, Amira. Keep your distance. That was my only anchor in this strange sea. My dorm room at university was small, with 2 beds shared with a girl named Emma. I discovered she was Christian, with golden hair and a smile that was too open, too warm for my world. On the first day, she offered me a plate of homemade cookies, her eyes shining with unexpected kindness. "I made them for you," she said, her voice soft, almost like my mother's. I froze, my heart pounding. Was this a trap? My father had taught me to be wary of kindness. I mumbled a thank you and pushed the plate away, hands shaking as I unwrapped my prayer rug. That night, I prayed extra rakas, pleading with Allah to keep me strong. But Emma's smile was still there, soft and disconcerting in my mind. Classes were a world of their own. My literature teacher sat me next to Sarah, a Jewish girl with curly hair and glasses that kept slipping down her nose. She was quiet but kind, and she offered me her notes when I struggled with math. "We're in this together," she said, scribbling down equations as if nothing were hard. I stared at her, my stomach churning. A Jew helping me? Khalid's stories, my father's lectures, Amir's curses came flooding back to me. But Sarah's eyes were calm, kind, not cruel. I thanked her in a barely audible voice and hurried out, my heart clenching with guilt. Why was I talking to her? Why did she seem so human? The weeks passed, and I tried to keep my distance. I ate alone, prayed alone, studied alone. I carried Said Qutb's book with me, its weight a constant reminder of home. At night, I read his words, trying to silence the noise of this new world I found myself in. "The West is a lie," he said. "Its smiles hide daggers." But the smiles I saw were soft, genuine, not the daggers I expected. Emma left smiley-faced notes inviting me to movie nights. Sarah held a seat for me in class, waving shyly. David, a Christian boy, held the door open for me with an easy, warm smile. These were the people I was supposed to hate, but they didn't fit into the stories they told me. I lay awake in my room, the city lights buzzing outside, wrestling with questions I'd been trying to bury since I was 8. Why were they kind to me? Why didn't they hate me? I prayed, my forehead pressed against the carpet, asking Allah to guide me. But my prayers felt hollow, like I was shouting into a vast void. I missed my mother's gentle touch, my father's stern approval, even my brother's boisterous laughter. But taste seemed increasingly distant, a fading memory in the constant London haze. Then, one ordinary afternoon, everything changed. The university was organizing an interfaith event in the courtyard, something I had wanted to avoid at all costs. But Emma begged me, her sincere eyes preventing me from saying no. Reluctantly, I went, keeping to the edge, my hijab pulled tight around my face, my arms crossed like a wall. There, students of all faiths shared food, stories, laughter. In the center, an older Christian woman took the stage. Her voice was soft but firm. "Faith is about love," she said. "Jesus taught us to love our neighbors, even our enemies, because every soul is precious to God." Her words hit me like an unexpected wave, awakening something deep, hidden. Love your enemies. It was everything I had ever heard, and the opposite of what my father preached. His voice roared in my mind, calling the words blasphemy, but my heart clung to them, like a child reaching for light in the dark. I fled the courtyard, the hot air heavy, tears burning my eyes. I ran to a quiet corner of campus, a bench beneath a willow tree, and broke down, sobbing silently. The face of the Christian girl from Ties invaded my mind, her terrified eyes so much like mine. I remembered Sarah's shy smile, the cookies Emma had baked, the words of that speaker. None of it matched the hatred I carried inside. I whispered a prayer, but it wasn't to Allah. It was to something, someone I hadn't met yet. "Who are you?" I asked the sky, my voice breaking. "Why is this so hard?" That night, as I lay in bed, feeling Emma's soft breathing across the room, I stared at the ceiling, my heart a battlefield. I was still Amira, daughter of Ibrahim, but I was also becoming someone else, someone who saw good where before I had seen only evil. I didn't know where this path would take me, but I felt its irresistible pull, like a rushing river. London was changing me, and I feared losing my family, my faith, even myself. But there was a spark of curiosity, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. I didn't know it yet, but that spark would become a flame that would burn away the hatred I had been taught and ignite a love I had never dared to dream of. My second year began with a quiet ache, like an invisible bruise I avoided touching. Now 19, She was still Amira, Ibrahim's daughter. But the girl who had clung to her father's warnings was beginning to fade. London's vibrant colors, its bustling streets, its diversity of voices, and its unexpected kindness had seeped into me, softening the sharp edges of the hatred I carried. Still, I carried Taze in my heart, a weight that pulled me back from my roots even as I reached for something new ahead. Then love found me, unannounced, uninvited, and shattered my world in ways I never imagined. It all started in a literature class, in a small room with creaky chairs and tall windows that let in the pale autumn light. The teacher assigned us to discuss Cheese and Guava, a story of forbidden love between families and crossed destiny. I sat in the back, my notebook open in front of me, my hijab a shield against the world. That's when I noticed James. He was Christian, I would later learn, with dark hair that fell over his eyes and a laugh that warmed the room like sunlight filtering through the pages. He spoke about the play with a passion that made me pay attention. "Love doesn't care about rules," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "It just happens and changes everything." My heart raced and I looked away, my cheeks burning. Why was I looking at him? Why did those words seem directed at me? After class, James caught up with me in the hallway, backpack slung over his shoulder, smile easy. "Hey, Amira, what did you think of the play?" Paralyzed, I heard my father's voice reverberate in my head. Never trust them. But James's eyes were kind, not cunning, and I found myself answering, my voice low. "It's sad. They loved each other, but they lost everything." He nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, but they were brave to try, don't you think?" I didn't know what to say. I just nodded, my heart racing as I walked away. My steps hurried. That moment was just the beginning of many more to come, little sparks that would eventually grow into an uncontrollable fire inside me. James had a way of finding me, always. In the library, he would choose the chair across from me and ask me how my day had been. In the cafeteria, he would share his coffee, joking about its bitter taste. He never pressured me, never asked about my faith or my hijab, but he really listened to me. His eyes made me feel seen, something I had never experienced before. I started looking for him, my heart pounding when I heard his laughter coming from across the courtyard. I told myself we were just friends, but my dreams betrayed that certainty. The way he smiled, his soft voice, the light touch of his hand on mine that took my breath away. One day, James invited me to a study group with his friends, all Christians, he said, as if it were no big deal. I hesitated, my father's warning still echoing, but curiosity and something stronger pulled me along. The group gathered in a cozy cafe, with walls lined with books and the smell of coffee mixed with cinnamon in the air. James's friends, Clara, Michael, and Hannah, welcomed me with open smiles and kind words. They spoke of their faith, not with anger, as my father had done, but with joy, sharing stories of Jesus' love, sacrifice, and invitation to forgive. "God wants us to love everyone," Clara said, her eyes shining, "even those who hurt us." It resonated with me, reminding me of the woman at the interfaith gathering the year before and stirring up a pain I had felt before. I came back every week, always saying it was for the notes, but really it was for James, for the way his presence made the world less heavy. Little by little, we began to see each other alone. One evening, we walked through a park, the leaves crunching beneath our feet, the sky painted the colors of dusk. We sat on a bench and watched the stars appear through the clouds. "What's it like where you come from?" James asked softly. I told him about Taiz, about Yemen, about the dust, the prayers, the olive trees, but I didn't tell him about the hatred. He listened to me, his eyes never wavering. For the first time, I felt like someone saw me as more than just a daughter of Ibrahim. That night I lay awake, my heart a storm of emotions. I loved James. I could admit it to myself in that silence, but it was a forbidden love. My father would reject me. My brothers would curse me. Allah would punish me. I prayed with my forehead on the carpet, asking for the strength to resist. But James's name whispered in my soul. I picked up Said Qutb's old book, its pages worn with age, searching for answers. His words were harsh, condemning Christians, calling their faith a lie. But they rang hollow in the face of James's kindness, Clara's warmth, the memory of Emma's cookie, Sarah's help. One rainy afternoon, James surprised me with a gift that changed everything. We were in the library, the rain drumming on the windows, books scattered across the table. He slid a small book toward me, plain cover, straightforward title, New Testament. "I don't want to change you," he said seriously. "I just want you to know what I believe. Maybe then you'll understand me better." I looked at him, my hands shaking. A Christian book was forbidden, a sin, but his eyes were so sincere that I accepted it, hiding it in my bag like a secret too heavy to carry. That night, alone in my room, I opened the Bible with my heart pounding, as if I were committing a crime. I read about Jesus, his words of love, his invitation to forgive, his sacrifice for all. "Love your enemies," he said. The same words I had heard before, but now they hurt even more deeply. I thought of the Christian girl in Taze, her look of fear. I thought of James, his smile. I closed the book with silent tears streaming down my face and whispered, "Who are you?" Not to Jesus, but to myself. The following week, everything came to a head. James and I were growing closer, and I could feel that closeness changing who I was. One night, down by the canal, under the lights dancing on the water, he took my hand gently. His touch was warm, but a stab of fear shot through me. "Amira," he said, his voice shaking, almost breaking, "I love you. I don't know where this will lead or what this means for us, but I can't hide it anymore. I'll respect whatever you decide," but I had to say it. His eyes searched mine, vulnerable and sincere, and I broke. "I love you too," I whispered, my voice breaking as the tears fell uncontrollably. "But I can't. My family, my faith, it's impossible." I pulled away, heartbroken, and walked to the nearby bridge. The cold wind mixed with my tears. I leaned against the railing, sobbing, the distant sounds of the city becoming a muffled roar. I loved James, but I saw my father's furious face, Khalid's anger, my mother's silent sadness. I saw Tice, his stones, the mosque, the hatred they had taught me. The Christian girl's eyes continued to haunt me. What was I doing? I cried out to the sky, my voice lost in the biting wind. I prayed not to Allah, but to something I did not know, a desperate plea in my heart for a way through the pain. Was love really a sin? Was James my enemy? Or was the real enemy the hatred they had taught me to carry? That night, as I lay in my room, Emma's quiet sigh coming from the other side, the Bible tucked under my pillow, I felt torn between two worlds, one of harsh rules and anger, the other of kindness and possibility. I didn't know where this love would take me, but it was already changing me, opening my heart like the dry desert earth surrendering to the rain. She was scared, but she also felt alive. A flame of hope burned inside me, pulling me toward a decision I didn't yet have the courage to make. The London rain fell hard that spring, as if the sky knew of the storm within me. I was 19, on the brink of a choice that felt like a leap into the void. James's love had shattered my heart, and Jesus's words, "Love your enemies, forgive, sacrifice," echoed in my dreams, clashing with the hatred I had been taught to hate. Every prayer, every glance at the hidden Bible, brought me closer to a truth I had feared to face. It was there that my story changed. It was there that I chose a new path, knowing that it could cost me everything I knew. I couldn't get the book James had given me out of my head. In the quiet of the night, with Emma sleeping across the room, I read it by the light from my phone, my heart pounding, as if I were stealing something forbidden. The stories of Jesus leaped from the pages. His compassion for the broken, his forgiveness for sinners, his love that demanded no hate in return. None of it was like the fire of Said Qutb's words, nothing like my father's fiery sermons. I saw the face of the Christian girl from Tais, her eyes filled with fear, and I wondered if Jesus had loved her, protected her. The thought made me cry, my tears wetting the pages, because it meant everything I had been taught was wrong. James could sense my struggle, even when I tried to hide it. We would walk along the banks of the Thames, the river glistening under the gray sky, and he would talk about his faith, not to convince me, but to open himself up. "Christianity is grace," he said one day, his voice soft as the wind played with my hijab, and we sat on a bench. "It's a God who loves you no matter what." I wanted to believe, but fear held me back. Fear of Allah's wrath, of my father's scream, of losing everything I had. I shut myself away, my silence heavy, and James waited. His eyes were patient, his hand brushing mine, like a silent promise. One Sunday, Emma invited me to church. "Just once," she said with a gentle smile. "No pressure." I said no, my heart racing, but those words stayed with me. A week later, I gave in, driven by a hunger I couldn't name. I hid, wearing a hoodie instead of a hijab, my hands shaking as I sat on a bench in the back of the church. The space was small, the windows stained with colors that danced in the morning light. The pastor, a woman named Mary, spoke of redemption, of a God who sees every heart. "You are never too far away," she said, her voice warm, like a mother's. "God's love always finds you." I felt exposed, as if she saw my entire soul, and tears began to flow, sliding down my face. I thought about the rocks thrown at Taze, the screams of hatred I'd repeated to myself, the weight of the anger I'd carried inside me. Could I ever be forgiven? Could anyone ever love me? I began to see Mary on the sly, sneaking into her classroom after school. She was older, her hair already tinged with gray, and her eyes held a sharp kindness, as if they saw through all my fears. I poured out all my doubts, about Allah, about Jesus, about my family, and about the hatred I had been taught to carry. How do I know what the truth is? I asked, my voice breaking. Mary listened to me, hands clasped, and said, "Truth brings peace, Amira. Even when it seems hard, listen to your heart." Those words were a beacon in my darkness, but they also terrified me. Choosing this path meant betraying my father, my brothers, my home. The decision came slowly, then suddenly. I spent nights in prayer, not the prayers Al-Safir taught, but raw supplications to a God I barely knew. The Bible, its pages now scarred by my touch, felt like a hand reaching out to me. One night, alone in my room, I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face. "If you are real," I whispered, "show yourself. I can't do this alone." A warmth enveloped me. It wasn't a clear answer, but a piece of something I had never felt before. In that moment, I knew I wanted to follow Jesus, to live in his love, not in the hatred my father had imposed on me. The baptism was a quiet, secret affair held in a small room in Mary's church. James stood there, eyes shining with pride, and Emma held my hand, smiling softly. Mary poured water over my head, her voice firm and tender. "Amira, you are a child of God." In that moment, I felt free, as if invisible chains had fallen away. But the fear of what this choice would cost weighed heavily on my chest. I hid the cross necklace under my shirt, the cool metal against my skin, a constant reminder of my new faith. I slowly stopped wearing the hijab, telling Emma it was for comfort, but really I was testing out this new Amira, this stranger I was becoming. Hiding it all was the hardest part. My family called me often, their voices thick with suspicion. Khaled, now 26, questioned my unusual ways. "Are you forgetting who you are?" he asked, his voice hard, like our parents. I lied, saying I was busy with school, but my heart ached too much. My mother's calls were softer, her questions full of care. "Are you happy, Amira?" she asked once, her voice shaking. I wanted to tell her everything, about James, the church, the peace I felt, but I couldn't. "I'm fine, Mom," I said through a tight throat, tears welling up as I hung up. I missed her, her gentle hands, the sad silence that surrounded her. But I was building a wall between us, brick by brick. James was my anchor, but even he couldn't shake the guilt. We'd sit in cafes, his hands holding mine, but I'd pull away when Muslim students walked by, afraid of being seen. "I'm here, Amira," he'd say firmly. "No matter what happens, I'm here." I loved him for it, but love didn't drive away the fear. My father's letters kept coming, each a reminder of my duty. "Come home after graduation," he wrote. "Al-Safir needs you." I read his words with the cross necklace burning against my chest and wept. How could I go back? And how could I stay? One night, I stood in front of the mirror in my dorm room, staring at a strange reflection. The necklace glowed, a symbol of my faith, but my eyes were those of my mother, my father, Ties. "I'm free," I whispered, touching the cross, "but I'm so alone." Heavy tears fell as I watched my family slip away from me. My father's pride, my classmates' laughter, Amir's disdain, my mother's silent love, it all faded away. I had chosen Jesus, I had chosen love, but it was like losing my home. I fell to the floor, clutching the Bible, and prayed for strength, courage, and a way to carry this secret without falling apart. I didn't know yet that my secret wouldn't stay hidden for long. The choice I had made, the love I had found, was like a raging fire that would soon consume everything around me, leaving me facing a reckoning I was unprepared for. But in that moment, I was just a mirror, a girl born again in faith, standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for the God I had chosen to catch me if I fell. The London winter was bitter, a cold that seeped into my bones, but the cold inside me was even more intense, biting. I was 20 years old, in my final year of university, and I carried a secret heavier than anything I had ever faced. My baptism, my love for James, my faith in Jesus. These were treasures I hid beneath my clothes, in the cross necklace pressed to my heart, in the Bible hidden under my mattress. But secrets are like cracks in a dam. They hold for a while, then they burst and flood everything around them. It was then that my story broke, where the love I found in London collided violently with the world I left behind in Al-Safir, and I lost the family I loved most. I lived a double life, walking a tightrope. By day, I was Amira, the diligent student, smiling with James, studying with Emma, praying with Mary at church. I attended services, my hoodie pulled up, feeling the warmth of the hymns wrap around me the way my mother's arms once did. But during calls with my family, I was the old Amira again, Ibrahim's daughter, a faithful Muslim, vowing to return to Thailand after graduation. I adjusted my hijab before video calls, hiding the cross, my voice steady as I lied about my life. School is busy, I would say, smiling, my heart pounding, guilt cutting through me like a knife. My mother's soft, piercing eyes through the screen made it all the harder. "Are you still my Amira?" he asked once, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes, and hung up before despair could overcome me. James was my safe haven. We would spend time hiding in quiet corners, a park bench beneath bare trees, a cafe with fogged-up windows, his warm hand holding mine. "You don't have to hide with me," he would say, looking straight ahead, and I would lean into him, resting my head on his shoulder, wishing I could stay there forever. But fear followed me, relentless. Muslim students on campus would whisper about me, noticing my missing hijab, my time with James. "Be careful," Emma warned me one day, her face serious. "People talk." I pretended to ignore it, but my stomach was twisted into knots of nerves. The revelation came without warning. Khaled, my older brother, who looked more and more like my father every day, announced that he was coming to London. "I need to see if you're still one of us," he said into the phone, his voice rough. Panic took hold of me, but I couldn't say no. He arrived one gray morning, his tall frame filling the doorway of my dorm, eyes roving the room like a hawk. I had hidden my Bible and necklace in a drawer, but I felt exposed, my heart racing as he held me close, his grip firm. "You've changed," he said quietly, and I smiled, offering tea, hands shaking. That night, everything happened. I went out to get groceries, leaving Khaled alone. When I returned, he was standing next to my desk, holding my Bible in one hand and the cross necklace in the other. His face was a storm, his eyes blazing with the anger I knew from my father. "What is this, Amira?" he roared, holding up the Bible as if it were poison. "You're one of them now." My knees went weak, my voice disappeared. I tried to lie, to run away from the truth, but it escaped raw and trembling. "I'm a Christian, Khaled," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I believe in Jesus. I'm sorry." He threw the Bible to the floor, crumpling the pages. "You are a traitor," he shouted, his voice shaking the walls. "You have shamed us. You have shamed Allah." I begged him to listen, to understand. My words tumbled out. "It's not cheating, it's love," I cried, thinking of James, of Mary's words about Jesus' forgiveness. But Khaled's face was a wall. He called me names I never thought I would hear from him. Apostate, infidel, lost. "You're dead to me," he said coldly, and left, the door slamming like a gunshot. I collapsed, sobbing, with the Bible at my feet, the pages open to a verse about love. I clutched my cross with trembling fingers and prayed, but peace did not come. The next day, my father called, his face on the screen contorted with fury. "You have chosen the enemy," he roared, his voice cracking. "You are not my daughter." My mother sat beside him, pale, tears streaming silently down her face. "Mommy, please," I begged, my voice shaking. "I'm still me. I love you." She looked away, her hands covering her face, and my father ended the call. The screen went black, and my world shattered, sharp, jagged pieces embedded in my chest. The fallout from rejection spread like wildfire. Muslim friends at the university stopped talking to me, giving me cold stares as we passed. Whispers followed me. Traitor, apostate, lost girl. I walked to class with my head down, feeling like 8-year-old Amira, the girl who had seen rocks flying in Al-Safir. I saw that Christian girl's face again, her terrified eyes, and wondered if this was my punishment for choosing love over hate. I stopped going to the cafe with James, afraid of judgment. But he found me, his voice soft. "You're not alone," he said, pulling me into his arms. I clung to him, sobbing, tears soaking his shirt. "I lost them, James," I cried. "My family, my home, was it worth it?" He held me tighter, his voice firm. "You're my family now." But not even his love could fill the void Al-Safir had left. Emma and Sarah tried to help me, inviting me to dinners, church services, study nights. Mary prayed with me, her hands warm in mine, but the pain was a weight I carried alone. I lay awake, reliving my father's words, my mother's tears, Khaled's anger. I saw Amir's face, imagined his disappointment, though he didn't care. I wrote letters to my mother, pouring out my heart, but I didn't send any. afraid they would burn in her hands. One night, standing by the temples, the water dark and choppy, I cried out into the wind, "Why is this so hard?" The city swallowed my voice, and I fell to my knees, praying to Jesus for strength, for a sign that I had not made a mistake. The days blurred, heavy with loss. I graduated, my diploma a hollow victory without the pride of my family. James stood there, clapping louder than anyone, eyes shining. I felt like a ghost, trapped between worlds. I carried my cross openly now. Its weight was both freedom and burden. I was Amira, a Christian in love with a boy who saw my soul. But I was also an orphan of ties, separated from the roots that made me. My heart ached for my mother's touch, my father's voice, even my brother's laughter. But they were gone, and I didn't know how to go on. I didn't know then that a glimmer of hope awaited me, that even in this darkness, love would light a path. But in that moment, I was broken, clinging to James, Emma, and my faith, praying they would be enough to carry me through the ashes of what I had lost. I am 25 years old now, and I am no longer the girl who hid her cross or trembled under my father's voice. The pain of losing my family and bonds persists, a shadow that never completely leaves me. But I have built a new life, piece by piece, fragile, held together by the love and faith for which I fought. This is where my story finds its end, or perhaps its beginning. I learned to carry my losses and hopes. I found a home in a world I once feared. I married James in a small church ceremony. Stained glass windows cast rainbows across our faces. Emma was my maid of honor, her smile bright as she adjusted my veil. Mary, the minister, blessed us, her voice warm with pride. I wore a simple white dress, the cross necklace shining openly, no longer hidden. James's eyes shone as he swore to love me no matter what. And I swore the same, my voice firm, despite the tears. It was a moment of pure, brilliant joy. But as I walked down the hall, I saw my mother's face in my mind, her gentle hands, her quiet sadness, and my heart ached. I gained a husband, a family, but I lost those who raised me. We settled in London, in a small flat filled with books and laughter. I became a teacher, working with immigrant children, girls with wide eyes like mine once were, boys with dreams bigger than their fears. I taught them English, but more than that, I showed them that they belonged, that they could be more than the worlds they had left behind. Every smile, every Miss Amira, felt like a small victory, a way to heal Ty's wounds. James worked as a counselor. His kindness was a light to others, just as it was to me. At night, we prayed together, holding hands, thanking God for this life, even if it wasn't the one I had planned. But the pain never went away. I would wake up sometimes with dreams full of Ty's, dusty streets, the call to prayer, my mother braiding my hair. I wrote her dozens of letters, pouring out love, faith, hope that she would understand. I mailed a few, my heart pounding as I dropped them in the mailbox, but no response came. I would stand by the window, the city lights blurred by tears, wondering if she read them, if she still loved me. My father's silence was a wall. Khalid's anger was an open wound. Amir's absence was an unsolved mystery. I prayed for them, asking Jesus to soften their hearts, but the silence was deafening. One day, a small, devastating miracle arrived in a shaky but familiar letter. "My daughter, my mother is a mirror. I read your words. I love you, but I cannot defy them. Be safe." Just 2 lines, but they broke me. I sank to the floor, clutching the paper, sobbing like I was 8 years old again, holding my doll. James found me, his arms around me, and I cried into his chest. The note crumpled in my hand. "She loves me," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "She still loves me." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was enough. A crack in the wall between us, a glimmer of hope. This hope gave me courage. I heard about a humanitarian project in Yemen, helping children displaced by the conflict. Something stirred in me, a desire to return, to face the place that shaped me, to offer the love I had found. James hesitated, eyes worried. "It's dangerous," he said, but he saw my determination and nodded. "I'm with you," he promised, and I loved him all the more for it. I traveled alone. The trip was a blur of fear and prayer. Landing in Ty's was like falling into a memory. Heat, dust, the mind piercing the sky. But I was different now. My cross hidden under my shirt, my heart firm and determined. I didn't see my family. I couldn't. The project kept me in a small school, teaching children to read, eyes bright despite the scars. One day I saw a familiar face, a 16-year-old girl scarred by memory. It was she, the young Christian girl from that night, whose terrified eyes haunted me. She recognized me, gaze softened. "You were there," he said, his voice low. I nodded, tears welling up. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She smiled, a small, forgiving smile. "You're here now," he said, and we hugged. Two girls once divided by hate, now united by something stronger. Before I left, I packed a Bible for my mother, wrapped in the scarf she had made for me. I left it at my old neighbor's house, praying it would reach her. I didn't know if she would read it, if it would change anything, but it was my offering, my hope for a bridge between the years. As the plane took off, Yemen shrinking below, I felt a weight lift, not disappear, but grow lighter. I had faced my past, left a piece of my new heart behind. Back in London, I stood with James at sunset, the sky painted gold and pink. We were close to the temples, the water calm, the city humming softly. "I lost my family," he said, his voice firm, wet with tears. "But I found myself. God gave me a new home." James shook my hand, his gaze warm. "And I am in it," he said. I smiled, tears falling, mixed with the hope in my heart. We prayed together, thanking God for the journey, for the love that carried me through the ashes of my past. I am a mirror, no longer just Ibrahim's daughter, but a woman reborn in faith, shaped by loss and love. Tice's scars will always be there, but also the light of London, the warmth of James, the promise of my mother's letter. I walked through the fire and came out in one piece, not perfect, but whole. And when the sun set over the horizon, I finally knew I was home.